for, a podcast about comedy and asking interesting people what they're nerdy for. I'm Amy Brown. I'm here with a special guest. My friend Jasmine Waters is here next to me. Jasmine is a writer, a producer, a stand-up comedian. She has 2 podcasts, Down and Nappy, which we had Carlette on the show and she told us all about it. And you also have While We Were Drinking, a podcast. And you and I got to do a show together in North Carolina. Nope. I was testing you. It was in Virginia. It was in Virginia Beach because you're from there, and it was so much fun. And I'm happy to have you on my podcast. Say hi.
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 What's up?
Yeah. So Jasmine, what are you nerdy for?
So I've been thinking about this like all day. Like I've been really stressed about it because I'm like, I'm nerdy for a lot of things and I can't decide which one is most appropriate for us to talk about. I love YA novels. I'm a big YA novel person, despite the fact that I am a grown woman.
A grown-ass woman.
just so fucking grown.
Is it because they're easier to read? Maybe I should get into them because my reading comprehension is poor.
I think it's because I love rom-coms, like I love like the romance and I like a nice YA, low stakes, but the stakes be high, but they're not that high.
How far do they take it? And this is YA is young adults,
right? It is.
And then so it's all of the like almost hand holding, or do they go all the way?
No. So there's a wide range of YA. So YA goes from like middle school to like college, like in terms of who the people are.
Do the people like in the Twilight books, do they do it in the books? Is it
technically once they get married they do.
They do it?
That one's written by a Mormon. You gotta
Is there special underwear involved in a weird sheet?
They might have done some jump humping prior, but I don't know the facts behind that. But yeah, so I really like the YA that's like high school to like college or like early 20s.
Did they do it in the sorry, I'm just focused on this because you're bringing out the romance part of young adult novels. Did they do in the Twilight movies? Did the characters?
Oh yes. Now
did they go
Twilight
behind a closed
movies,
door?
I am a professional on. Like I know what happens in those. I actually host Saga Days, where we watch all of the movies in one day. But yes, they do have sex in the last movie. No, the second to last movie.
Okay.
I mean they do it again in the last movie, but like the first time they do it isn't the second.
It's not one and done.
No. Once she becomes a vampire, they're really committed to the sexual endeavors of their lives.
Okay, that's pretty hot, actually.
I just wish she would have just committed to Jacob, but that's not the point. I like YA, I like rom-coms, and then I also, because of my time when I was teaching at history museums and such, I love talking about enslavement and civil rights movement. So,
Yes.
I run the gamut of really, really thoughtless things that I do, and then
Really
things that
important.
are just too thoughtful.
Well, you got to balance it out. I don't think I feel like reading about the civil rights movement and the still terribleness of America is a lot. And then you're like, and now let me go into a fantasy world.
Exactly.
Right?
Especially as a black woman,
Yeah.
During 2020, everybody was like, well, did you see this? Did you read that? I'm like, bro, I don't need to watch 12 Years a Slave. I don't need to watch any. I want to watch Emily in Paris. I want to see her traipse around Paris in all of these spaces that I know are not close together. I want to see her date the hottest men possible. And I want her to see her ruin her life. That's what I'm there for.
Yeah, that character is very wild. That Emily, it was a feast for the eyes. All that fashion was so exciting. They were dressing her like a lunatic in that show.
No more crazy than like Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City.
Is it the same person doing
Same writer.
it? I felt like it. Okay, that makes sense then, because it's like, what's like the most fashion forward pushing thing we can put her in?
And Carrie looked crazy.
Yes.
I rewatched Sex and the City a lot, and I'm on season 6, and she has like those 2 blonde stripes in front of her head, but the rest of it's brown, and I don't know what's happening.
They're going for it. They're going big or going home. I feel like if you write civil rights versus a rom-com, there's like fighting for good and evil, like in both things.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's more fun to have it be like, we can solve everything with love.
Yeah. Except, not racism.
No,
but
it's not working.
It's because people don't have love. There's not that much. We write about it, but it doesn't exist in
Bless
the
our
world.
hearts. I know. Golly. Okay, so this is cool. And then you worked at the History Museum.
Yeah, I used to work at the Atlanta History Center. I also used to work at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. I did a lot of I still kind of do a lot of contract work around.
And you were on the
all of it.
television about it.
I was.
It was so cool. I was so excited. I paused it and I took a picture of you on the television and I sent it to you.
Yeah, years ago, I was the director of interpretation interpretation at the Atlanta History Center. So I was running all of the historical houses. So that included the Margaret Mitchell House that was in Midtown. And everybody in Atlanta or in Georgia, I'm not from Georgia originally, loves Margaret Mitchell. And I cannot stand Gone with the Wind. But I had to do a tour for 11 Alive or one of those. They came in and I had to do like a walkthrough tour and talk to them about the premiere in Atlanta. And I'm very good at when I'm talking about something and people are like gushing about a racist white woman who wrote a book that was, just perpetuating heritage, not hate. When I have to talk about that, I also talk about the racism. So while they were filming me, I was like, yeah, no, totally. Martin Luther King Jr. was on the steps singing with his father's congregation for the premiere because they all dressed up as enslaved people and they were at the premiere.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, but you can see how problematic that was. And a lot of people in his congregation were actually really pissed to be a part of that. So
wait, you just blew my mind. Was it a protest? Or
No,
did they volunteer to dress as slaves and sing in front of the premiere?
Yep.
I'm sweating through my hoodie.
Martin
Whoa.
Luther King Sr., so MLK's dad, was the original pastor at Reverend Ebenezer Baptist Church. And that was the old Ebenezer Baptist Church. And pretty much what happens is the premiere comes to Atlanta, fanfare, all that. Black people are not allowed in the theater because
it's
racism.
Fox Theater was still segregated then. Yes.
And they're like, no, absolutely not. But the Junior League had put on like the premiere parties and everything prior to, and MLK Sr. got his congregation to come out dressed as enslaved people, sit on the front steps and sing spirituals as part of the fanfare of it all, which a lot of his congregation were very uncomfortable with and did not enjoy it.
I bet.
And little MLK can be seen in the photograph on the stairs amongst them because that was his daddy.
I think I'm remembering. I think it didn't premiere at the Fox Theater. It was a different theater downtown because of which company made the movie, and they couldn't. Sorry,
I don't know. That is quite possible.
But I know the Fox Theater was segregated.
Yeah, that one was still segregated,
like, and way longer than if that history is not that long ago.
And wherever they did show it, it was still segregated because Hattie McDaniels couldn't come, and initially. Clark Gable and what is her name, Vivian Lee, were going to protest and not come. But Hattie McDaniel was like, no, y'all need to go to Atlanta. Atlanta is a very affluently Black city, and I need the money to go back to those communities. So go to Atlanta, raise the money, and it will go back to Black people.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Hattie McDaniels is perfect.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that piece of history.
So much knowledge. But yeah, I just ruined that for them on the news. I did. They wanted me to be like, oh, Gone with the Wind, best book. And I was like, hate it.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Like, I read it one time when I was in Italy. Okay. And that was the only book I could find in English.
Yep. I've never read the book, but I have seen half of the movie, and that was plenty. I was like, yeah,
and I'm good.
Don't need to commit to any more of this.
What's your favorite place to take people who are coming to Atlanta to visit? What's your favorite place to take them?
I love food and I like drinks. So a lot of my friends that come into town,
I thought you were going to say the Civil Rights Museum.
No, I can teach them about history without us going to those places. So yeah, usually it's Vortex because burgers and mystery shots are my vibe.
Mystery shots? You like to live on the edge.
You know, until my body tells me that it's too much, which, I'm in my 30s now. So
I was going to say, I don't even do mixers anymore. And you're doing mystery shots? I need to know exactly what's going into my body because my body is protesting.
I just, we smell, even on While We Were Drinking, we have like a mystery shot segment where we have like a grab bag of Greek shots and we don't know what we're about to take a shot of. And we try to guess. It's often a mistake. But
what possibly could go wrong?
So many
How many
things.
times have you thrown up?
Never.
Never.
We're
ever.
professionals. Yeah.
Good for you. after I had my second baby, I went out drinking with my lady friends, like, finally, like, get to hit the town after not partying for 10 months.
Yeah, I was like, that's almost a year.
I came home and I threw up on my dishes. They were in the sink, like a lady. I got to the sink.
That's completely fine.
But it was like all of our dinner dishes were in there. I'm like, okay.
You know what?
Can't do that anymore.
At least it was the sink.
Right? Well, I mean, I am a lady.
Could have been anywhere else.
It could have been everywhere. It could have been in my hair.
Right.
Ugh.
And that's a nightmare.
That is a nightmare. Mystery drinks. That is throwing me even more than this singing on the steps.
I guess, though, if I was going to take people to a historical institution, it could be the National Center. It could also be the Atlanta History Center. I'm just not as wowed by them now that I've worked at them. Like when you work at a fast food restaurant for a really long time and you're like, okay, I've done it.
Yeah, I've had enough French fries.
That's how I feel about both of those spaces.
They built a new, for the circle thing, a new house for it. The Circle-rama.
Oh, Cyclorama, yes.
Cyclorama. I was testing you. You did great. Cyclorama. I saw it in the original location.
At the zoo.
At the zoo, because my son had to do a paper on it for school.
Yeah.
And then they moved it, and I haven't seen it in the new auditorium. And that's just a weird story. The Cyclorama is crazy because it was like painted by this guy who was running like for Senate from Ohio. Like it's the Northerners winning the Battle of Atlanta.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the coolest thing that happened while I was still at the Atlanta History Center. We acquired the Cyclorama while I was still there, and I was on a few of the committees talking about like reinterpreting it as it should be. Of course, there was a lot of discussions because some people wanted to focus on the battles, and just want to talk about like military history. But there was a good chunk of us that wanted to talk about the actual history and how it was used as propaganda.
It's an advertisement.
Yep, and how it like changed like what.
I think we should
what its mode of propaganda was, because that changes over time
Let's
too.
do a quick description of it for people who don't know what the cyclorama is. How it's tall and it's huge.
So cycloramas are, so there's more than one, but I think the one that the Atlanta History Center now has is like one of 3 that still exist in the United States. I could be making that up because it's been a few years since I've had to say it. But it's this huge painting that's in a full circle.
20 feet tall.
Very tall.
And then you're in the center of it. It's like you're inside of a hat box.
Yeah, you're supposed to feel like a cityscape. Like you can kind of turn around and see it all. So the way it was... when it was at the zoo, what they had to do in order for it to fit in that space was cut a couple of panels off of it.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't the entirety of the actual painting.
Oh, wow.
And they also had people in seats spinning when the original way in which it's supposed to be seen is you're supposed to be in the space and you're supposed to move.
And you're rotating
rather
yourself.
than this chair spinning and everything. So ours is the Battle of Atlanta. That's the one that's here. And you can kind of see Kennesaw Mountain off in the distance. You can see Stone Mountain off in the distance. You wonder if the distances are right, all of those fun things.
It's an artistic interpretation because it was just meant to get some guy elected Senate seat, right? Am I wrong?
I think that there's multiple stories attached to it because the history continues, like, accurate,
the provenance.
But there's so many things. So I think there was somebody who's getting elected. I think there was also like a salesman who had it at one point because it moved a few times before it came to Zoo Atlanta.
I heard it was in a circus.
Yep.
And the circus went bankrupt in Atlanta, and that's why we have it.
Sounds accurate. I'm not gonna lie to you. It sounds right. When the Atlanta History Center acquired it, I think a lot of Atlantans were a little pissed because they wanted it to stay how it was at the zoo, because there were some people who really loved that attraction. And the Atlanta History Center was focused on restoring it to the way it naturally looked, which they did. And then the interpretation was focused around how it's propaganda and how it built mythology and, and the people that were left out of the story. And so some people, when they came to see it, were really pissed. But there's this really, what I will say is if you do go and you do see it, there's this really cool projection that I got to be a part of the process of it being created that is now projected onto it that talks about when it was created, why it was created, and like goes through in these like vignettes of like silhouettes of people like looking at the cyclorama through time, which is pretty cool. I will say, I think it's good, and it shows like how Confederate soldiers saw this the Civil War, and how there was so much intention in how we interpreted that way, and how who we left out, the stories of women, the stories of Black people, all of those things, the stories of Indigenous people. So it touches on like all of those things, and I think that's pretty cool.
It's like if it's the 1700s and a guy wants to be the head of the clan or whatever in like Scotland, like let's do it like Jamie Fraser, like if he had a poster painted of himself in a battle winning and like being muscular, right? It's kind of what that whole thing was. But
yeah, they even added the diorama pieces. The diorama pieces weren't with it originally. Then they
there's
get those
a Clark
pieces.
Gable, right?
There's a Clark Gable.
There's a Clark
he's
Gable
right
mannequin.
there, just dead.
It's a mannequin, right? And he's dressed as a Union soldier.
He's dressed as a Union soldier, and he's dead.
That is a weird combo. That is a weird ass combo to
because
have.
he asked after the premiere of Gone with the Wind, he was like, "I want to be in this. Make me one."
Did he?
Yeah, and they made him one because the history's not real.
History's not real.
But we do what we want.
If you have good cheekbones, you get what you want.
If you're a white man, you get what you want.
That's probably that.
That's still today too. That's not even just back then. That's
every day, man. If I could wake up as a white man one morning, I'm gonna hit the streets.
I have not been to the cyclorama in its new place, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's fine.
I'm gonna see it.
There are people who I remember the opening of it. We had established rules that people weren't allowed to dress in costumes. Because
Did they want to?
We had interpreters that dressed in costumes to do monologues and things like that. And we were like, hey, for the safety of our people, plenty of people used to come in there. Gone with the One Finest. And so they were like, yeah, we got to stop doing that. And there was this man who came in a Confederate cappy, and he had his little Confederate flag tucked in his back pocket. And the second he was able to, he unfurled it and was very upset when he got kicked out, and then went to Facebook and complained about how the History Center was erasing history and...
erasing history.
White men history. It's you know how they do. They're like, "Are you talking about my great grandpappy?"
they're like, why can't I be racist? That's my right.
It's my right.
You have to be tolerant of my hate.
History, not hate. Do you not like this Confederate flag? It's so pretty.
Oh my God.
Yeah. White people are hard to work with sometimes. Y'all are wonderful.
I hear you.
You're very right.
Dude, I know, right? Yeah, that's so crazy. So this is sometimes when you go through the Atlanta history center, they used to have a shotgun house in there, and I walked through it and I couldn't breathe, and my friend walked through it. He came out the other side and he's like, I have pressure on my chest from walking through there, and we think there might be some energy in there. Did you ever feel that?
I wonder, I assume that y'all are talking about the enslaved cabin that was in the same space as the farmhouse, maybe?
Was inside the building.
Oh.
And it was 2 rooms.
I think I know which one you're talking about. That was in that one section.
No, okay.
I didn't spend too much time in there.
Was the because I know there's some crazy artifacts that get sent to history museums. Oh, I don't know. Art made out of hair of your loved ones.
Yeah, people are gross.
Have you what's the craziest? There's a whole woven hair of loved ones into art. What's the craziest thing you've seen?
I will say to speak of energy, when I used to work, so the Swan House is on the same property. So that's part of the museum.
The Swan House was built in the teens.
Early 1900s, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a large fancy house. And at the time it was built, it was away from the city, and it had a lot of land around it. And
city didn't exist, yeah?
Yeah. Oh. No,
yeah. I mean, it existed, but not in the way it exists now.
And then now it's just a Buckhead. Now it's all a community.
Yeah. The Inmans were the family that lived there. Very rich folks. If you think about that section, that neighborhood in Buckhead, it is that. It's just that, but it's earlier. It's very rich, old white money. Very honestly, it's where they also filmed the Hunger Games.
Oh.
So the Hunger Games, President Snow's mansion and his office is
the Swan
at Swan House. And so when I first started working at the Atlanta History Center, I took my tour of the Swan House, and on the top floor, and it's called the Swan House because of the bird motif that they have in the dining room, because the Inmans is the name of the family, but Swan is kind of a coined thing based on design. So the servants' quarters would be on the top floor. I used to avoid that floor like the plague because like there's energy up there, in my opinion. Like even standing outside looking at that window, I'd be like, nope.
There's the circle window.
Yep.
Yes, I know exactly what
It would
you're
always
talking
feel like
about.
somebody was watching me from up there. And honestly, if I worked for them, I would do the same thing. I would haunt their asses and the guests for the rest of their lives. But man, it always made me feel so unsettled. Like I knew I was safe, but I was also like, cool, I'm going to leave you alone. It feels like you're going through something up here, so I'm going to go downstairs because that's the original location of that one. Now, the farmhouse was relocated
the Smith
from...
farmhouse.
and that one was built in the 1800s, so in 1860... Well, it was built in the 1840s, I believe. And that one was relocated from like the North Druid Hills area. So I feel like there was less energy. But when the lights went out, like when we were done with programs and stuff and we turned out the lights of the house, it is pitch black out there.
Yeah.
So I was never out there by myself after programs. We all had our flashlights. I got to light as soon as possible. I never looked back at the house. I was like, nope, this is not for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
a lot of my fears and my stresses were house related because I was like, there's people used to live in here. I know people died. I'm not gonna stress anyone out, especially in the enslaved cabin. I gave a lot of respect and honor to that space.
Me too. When I was
because there's enough people that come in there and really just don't care.
Really? Do you think they don't know what it is?
Yeah, but then you have interpreters in there that are trying to explain it, and then the thing about the Civil War or that time period is people are very defensive, especially here in the South, of what their families did and didn't do. So you get a lot of people who come in there and be like, well, my family didn't own slaves. And then I would kindly tell them like, okay, cool. So you know how families don't own cars right now? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, but do you think they want a car? Same.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, like, not to brag, but my family was too poor.
Honestly, like they were aspirational. It cost a lot of money to own human beings. So just because your family didn't own one doesn't mean they didn't want one.
And this is, I don't want to sound like I'm supporting anything at all, but this is one of the things people say is that Black people own slaves too. And I'm like, I know that's not the argument though. That's not what we're talking about.
Not. And like, man, again, I guess this is a nerdy podcast, so I'm allowed to nerd out. And a lot of that rhetoric comes from the continent of Africa. I say continent very intentionally because, everybody always talks about Africa as one place, and we forget that there's countries inside of it, and inside those countries are states, and inside those states are cities. But a lot of that rhetoric comes from indentured servitude. It's not really indentured servitude, but like the same idea of indentured servitude in different countries in Africa. So they're like, oh, well, Black people sold Black people. I'm like, that's not what people thought was happening. So the same way we have indentured servitude or people who had to pay off debts, like if they had to pay off their debts for their families and they were like, oh, well, so-and-so is going to work this debt off for X amount of years. And then what happens is you come to the Americas, specifically what is now the United States of America, and we get chattel slavery, which is very different than what slavery had existed in different forms previously. Previously, enslavement was based around debts or things that you owed based on a service that you had received, and it's usually not. It doesn't usually pass down from generation to generation.
And be associated with the color of your skin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So chattel slavery is specifically associated with the color of your skin and continues throughout generations.
Yeah.
Initially it wasn't matrilineal. Originally, if your father was white, then you were free and you had rights. This woman named Lucy up in Jamestown, Virginia, in the 1700s, I believe it was, actually had that court case where she had sex with a white man. Let me not say whether or not it was consensual, because I don't know. I wasn't there. But her son, a mixed child, she went to court and said he is a freed man, because just because I'm enslaved doesn't mean he is. It's not matrilineal. And her son was declared free. However, right after that, we changed the laws so that enslavement was matrilineal. So whatever your mother is what you are, which is also what gets us to the space where owners of enslaved people, so enslavers, are taking advantage and raping a lot of their young women that they have, that they own, and they are making more enslaved people that then continue to work on their property because those children are not free and the illegitimacy is legalized. So, we just created a monster because a lot of people are all like, another argument is like, oh, well, America didn't get that many enslaved people compared to like Brazil and other areas. But the thing is, we have more within years because of that process of breeding.
Right. I don't know if you know all the answers of slavery. You're doing a great job of explaining everything. I hadn't heard chattel slavery before. I think that's an appropriate word for it. I feel like slavery in the United States ended yesterday. Like, it seems so close in history when you think it's like 3 grandpas away. Were we like the last country to outlaw it?
Yes. Yeah. We were mad late. And then after enslavement was declared illegal, so of course, Juneteenth is now seen as a national holiday. Whoop, whoop. But it wasn't, and people knew about it. And now Amazon has lost their damn minds. Every time Juneteenth comes around, I see decorations and I'm like, that's not what that is. So, 1864, people are officially set free, quote unquote. But then as some forms of reparations are developed and put into place, so in formerly enslaved people are given access to Congress. There are actually more Black men in Congress at that time than in any time after, for a very short stint. Because then after time passes a little bit and after the Union soldiers stop paying attention and like they're like, okay, cool, we did it. We're going to go back home. War's over. We're having a good time. Yeah. We established Jim Crow laws. And that completely takes away anything that was given to people who were formerly enslaved. So in Charleston, there was this great plantation. I hate that sentence that I just said. It was a plantation, but it's now interpreted, and it's actually a plantation I didn't mind going to because they interpreted it very well, and they focus only on the Black people who lived there throughout time. And it's called the McLeod Plantation. And one of the stories is one of the gentlemen who had been living there and working on the farm, who was enslaved on the farm or plantation. After the Civil War ends, he acquires a chunk of land on that plantation. He's given a chunk of land. The white family is gone. There's a lot of like affluency that is happening amongst the Black community there. And then the white family comes back and goes, nope, this is our land. And they get kicked off of the land that they had been cultivating. Oh. So there's a lot of that going around right after the Civil War. And then we get into Jim Crow laws. And as we all know, those have never fully gone away. Even though they're gone now, they exist. I think all of the underlying foundations of enslavement and Jim Crow and how we've been like slow working out of it are direct correlations to the racial imbalances in our nation still, Yeah. Working on it, but we're not there yet.
I was somehow I got like the original charter language for Ansley Park area. It is very racist, and it's like I think it's even to like the point of like Gentiles, like all of that kind of stuff.
Every time,
damn, they even wrote it down.
Oh yeah, no, people be meaning it. Like even like the segregation documents for the Civil War, people are like, no, it wasn't about slaves. It wasn't about enslaved people. That's crazy. But then you read like the Mississippi secession documents or the South Carolina secession documents, and they are very clear. Mississippi is like, hey, we're leaving because you're trying to take away our $1 million industry, which is owning people.
Yeah.
And if you're going to take that away, we take ourselves away. And Mississippi is like, they mean it. They're like, it is enslavement that we are fighting for. And then everybody after that is like, nah.
Yeah.
But we can thank the Daughters of the Confederacy for that. They worked really hard to change textbooks. So yay.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. And that was like in the early 1900s. Those sisses, they're why we have monuments that have been taken down.
Okay.
It was them.
The Daughters of
Because
the
women
Confederate.
always get shit done. We know
This
that.
is true.
Yeah.
I went to a
Sometimes
women's
that shit's real
college.
bad though.
Oh yeah, 100%. Sometimes
Yeah.
we're like, man, put them back in the kitchen. Would that help?
yeah. You're like, let's roll it back. Hold on.
They have too much power.
I have a joke about this. Bossy Women got prohibition passed.
Look.
I watched the
Yes.
Ken Burns thing, and it was just all these pictures of like women just like, like breaking
That's
bottles and.
I look at Swifties every day, and I am afraid of them in a lot of ways because there is nothing like a white woman on a mission. Last time I saw a white woman on a mission, Daughters of the Confederacy. Now Swifties. I'm scared of them.
Oh.
I mean, like, I'm not scared, but I'm scared enough to worry about what they're up to.
The
Yeah, like,
potential.
we got to keep an eye on them. What are they
Hopefully,
doing?
Taylor will harness their energy for
No,
good.
don't trust her
You
either.
don't trust her
Gotta keep an
either.
eye on her.
Yeah, you gotta.
But I
Is
won't
that-
say it too loud because
is
the
that why-
Swifties come for your podcast.
Is that why Kanye got up on stage? You knew, like, when she was trying to accept that award,
Look,
and he's like, went all crazy.
He wasn't
You wanna
wrong.
Take her down a notch.
It was
I know
just
Beyonce
not
was
the
good.
diplomatic way to do it. And then Taylor Swift, you look at her go. You know, I'm proud of her, but she could be president one day if she really tried.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that.
The gals love her. I mean, yeah, I'll take her over.
Right, what are the choices right now? At least she knows how to use a cell phone.
Yeah, we need to get old men out of
Oh my
politics.
gosh, these people are geriatric.
Yeah, they're waiting to die.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, this is like a little bit about your work and history stuff, because whenever I'm near the reenactor person, my armpits start sweating, and because they can only respond to you as that person from that time period. And so it's a little bit like talking to an autistic person. And you're like, what you just said doesn't make sense based on what I just said. And I feel like I don't know how to talk to them. And then I feel like they must feel uncomfortable having to pretend to be this person, and they're not on stage. Like, they're trying to do interaction. Did you ever have to do that?
Yeah, that was my first job, like my first job in Atlanta.
Is it okay? Am I overplaying
No.
it? Am I being worried about the person more than they're okay doing it?
Depends. It depends on the person. It depends on the thing. So for several years, I did first person interpretation as an enslaved woman.
Wow.
I really appreciated.
How did that make? Can you just tell me how that made you feel?
So it was twofold. One side, I was very happy to give a voice to people who we had forgotten about their history for a very long time. But on the other hand, because I was delivering that information to humans, I hated it because people don't know how to act in those situations. I'd been called Mammy before. I'd been called Celie from The Color Purple before. I've had white people tell me if I was in the house sewing, they would come in and be like, "Oh, you're gonna make me one next?" And so I spent a lot of my time making people as uncomfortable as they tried to make me.
You are the bravest person.
So
You're amazing.
When people would ask me, for example, like, "Ooh, are you gonna?" If I was cooking open hearth, and they're like, "When's lunch ready?" And then I would be like, "Did my owner tell you that you were invited?" So lunch?
Is that that's
Or I'm sorry, did you expect me to make you a shirt? That's crazy. You don't own me. Did you want to own me? Maybe you should talk to my owner about bartering to own my life, as a human being. So I'd make people feel uncomfortable.
100-year-old shade you're throwing.
Man, I was the shadiest little thing there. But because you kind of have to shake people up for them to really understand, like, okay, you're trying to make a joke about something that is real serious. If you want to go be funny, you can go hang out with the white interpreters. They're chilling, they're doing white people stuff. But if you want to talk to me, you got to come in a very serious manner. But yeah, I enjoyed telling the stories, but it was hard not to want to murder people sometimes.
People, yeah, I hear you.
Because people suck. But there were also fun moments where you realize that we're I mean, we already knew the education system. It doesn't do right by all of our students. But there was a day we had a tour and I was cooking and, we allowed students to ask questions. And one of the questions that the Wee Baby Angels had asked me was if I had met Martin Luther King Jr. yet. And so the way, me and my counterparts, we all had ways of talking our way through questions that weren't in our time period.
Oh, yeah.
When we were in character.
That makes sense.
So I had said to them, I'm not sure who that is, but if I had to wager a guess, that's going to be a person who's born later than where we are now. And they were like, but has Martin Luther King? So Martin Luther King hasn't freed the slaves yet.
Oh.
And I was like, well, I don't know that person is going to free the slaves. I'm pretty sure we're going to be freed before that. And then the teacher in the back, bless her, was like, yeah, Martin Luther King hasn't freed the slaves yet. Don't worry about it. I was like, girl, please tell them. Please tell them that enslavement is over by the time he's
Martin Luther King
born. Don't do this to the babies. So yeah, there's a big gap.
Yeah.
Historically, and I'd be worried about kids because they say the darndest things.
We gotta make some TikToks explaining it real quick.
Yeah, I mean, you got 30 seconds, or they will tune out.
Oh golly. All right, good for you. You're so brave. Did you come from an improv background to be able to handle all that?
I did. So when I moved to Atlanta, I was like, I'm going to be an actress, I was really my acting bag. I just graduated from my program in theater education. I was substitute teaching, but I was also trying to act. I was working at a few local theaters, stage managing, and then one of the actresses on something that I was stage managing worked at the Atlanta History Center. She was like, we have an education department. You should come join it. You have a degree in this. And I was like, that would be magical. Can you give my resume to someone? And the education department at the time didn't have space, but the historic house, which was separate, did have space. And then I was hired. And I was the only Black person interpreting enslavement at the time.
Wait,
the only Black
I'm having
person.
A stroke.
So the
in
education
Atlanta. In Atlanta.
The education department had Black people, but they did all of our tours. So they did the tour on the farm, but they also did civil rights. They did this other tour that was around the Civil War, but in different areas. So in terms of from 10 to 5 o'clock when we closed, people who were in character dressed up. I was of my colleagues there, I was the only Black person. So there were people who represented family members of the white people,
right?
And I was the only person representing an enslaved
person. Is that
person.
because they couldn't find people who wanted to do it, or they weren't looking to do that?
They had just started enslavement interpretation at the farm.
Oh, okay.
So,
and this was how old are you? That wasn't very long ago.
I was 23.
So when was what year was this? They started doing it?
20. So I started there 2014. So they had probably started interpretation with enslaved or talking about Black people in 2012, 2013. So they were still trying to figure out that interpretation by the time I got there. Yeah. And they definitely were trying to figure it out because the education department had some based around their tour, but then I was really the person who helped figure out what that interpretation was for the enslaved people in person or interpreting enslavement on the farm all day. Because I was the only one.
Bringing it to life.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a self-selecting group of people that would want to do that.
It's definitely
you have to be so strong.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. I know when I first started, my family, my friends were like, "You're doing what?" But then as I got into it, I was like, "Nope, our stories are really important because even when you think about the house, so some of my coworkers, they were interpreting Mr. Smith's children, but by the time we're interpreting, because we're interpreting around the Civil War, his kids would have had their own houses. They wouldn't be at their dad's house every day.
Yeah.
But so the number of enslaved people would have outnumbered the amount of white people on the farm at the time. So it was just it should have been more of us. By the time I was out of that position there, there was two of us who were there like all the time, and then sometimes people from the education department would come
and moonlight
and be with us as well.
Mark Kendall has a joke about doing this kind of work.
Yeah, the Enslaved Ghost tours.
The Enslaved Ghost, and he wasn't
It's so
allowed to
good.
say slave or enslavement. He's like, I'm in an unpaid internship.
Yeah, no, we did not have those parameters. I was allowed to say slave. I was also allowed, and once I started doubling down on being an asshole when people were rude, I never got any pushback. It was never like, "Oh, Jasmine, you're making everybody uncomfortable." I'm like, I don't. It would be a weird thing to have to say, but yeah, it was definitely a weird job, and I think had I been a different age and like, I was living in a new city, I was broke. This job was paying more, and I was ready to do something closer to my field. So I kind of just jumped at it. But I was glad I was there because with me and some of my other Black colleagues, we were able to make that space better. We also
You're
stopped
making a foundation for other people to step into as you left.
And we stopped doing third-person interpretation or first-person interpretation. So,
what's that mean?
So instead of me dressing as a character and being like, hi, I'm this person, and this is my struggle. If there wasn't a written monologue for us to act out or a written scene for us to act out, we didn't do like the improv piece of it anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because improvising an enslaved person was very dangerous for the interpreter. So especially as I became like manager and then became director of the department, I like really doubled down on that. So if we weren't doing like a performance piece, people were just in our normal shirts and like
there to answer
talking
questions
about the history.
Yes.
Rather than us doing kind of this dog and pony show of enslavement, because there are me and my colleague or old coworkers got together recently and went to Bomb Biscuits, which is a restaurant by Chef Erica Council. She came to the History Center a few times and cooked with us, and I had the pleasure of cooking with her. And she now has a restaurant in Old Fourth Ward, I think. And so we went over there and we all got together, drank, and we were talking. And it was like, okay, cool. What are your best memories and your worst memories from our time at this space? And the thing about it is you realize how dark the times were, but how proud of the work you were doing. I was always proud to share the history. And I was always proud, especially to teach the young people who were malleable to it. But man, there were some dark days. There were dark days where they had us doing some real problematic stuff that I won't say just in case. I mean, I didn't sign any contracts, but just in case it's not appropriate. But man, some of them I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Looking back at it, I don't know that we should have been doing that one. That one seems questionable. It seems dicey. But all of my knowledge that I have now is based on the research that I got to do while I was there. So,
did you get like memoirs from people, like their diaries or things like that, and you're able to like in their own words?
So researching enslavement is really hard, actually, because it was illegal for enslaved people to know how to read or write. And so if they did know how to read or write, it was an anomaly. That was like the exception, not the rule. So you have some things, but you don't have a bunch. So a lot of the resources that you get are third-party resources like the WPA slave narratives, which when you're even deciphering through those, you have to consider those were collected. A lot of those interviews are collected later after enslavement ends. And a lot of those people that are conducting the interviews are white people who are offering these formerly enslaved people things like groceries in order to give them like some knowledge about what was happening on the farm. So there's this pressure to not fully implicate the horrors or the hardships. So you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. It's also where we get a lot of the way we think enslaved people talked. Like how we, like when you're
cartoon
watching
character style.
Yeah. Like that Jim Crow, Sambo character sounding. We get a lot of that from those because when they were taking down those interviews, they wrote a lot of what was said with an accent, despite the fact that enslaved people likely spoke with the same level of intelligence as their owners. So depending on who the enslaver was, they would speak normally, So there's just a lot of information that you kind of have to sift through and figure out what's what's feasible and what's not. Similar with like enslaved records and like knowing who was on the farms or on the plantations when, because one person coming to do the census could be like, okay, there's this woman named Lucy and she looks about 17 and I'm going to describe her as brown. Yeah. But then the next person that comes the next year could be like, okay, there's Lucy. Yeah, she looks like 19 because we don't know her birthday. And I'm going to describe her as mulatto. Sorry to say that. I hate that word. But like, that's what a lot of the records say. And you have to figure out if these are the same people. Sometimes you don't even have names. Right. Sometimes it's just like young woman in guest ages. So a lot of that research was really hard to do. But once you get into it, very interesting to sort through and to get a clear picture of a group of people who made their own community out of nothing. You know, enslaved people came over here or were brought over here, and a lot of them spoke different languages because they came from different areas in Africa, different countries in Africa. So you have all these people speaking different languages from different places thrown into the same place. Now they have to create a new language with each other. A lot of people brought over things like rice in their hair or seeds. That's how we get like watermelon over here. Oh, wow. Because they didn't know where they were going. So you bring something that you know. And then like different cooking methods we get from enslaved people, especially here in the South. So there's a lot of really cool culture that comes along with it. And you see the resiliency of people and how people survive through genocide, ultimately.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, there's not people dressing up at the concentration camps as in prison, I'm guessing.
No. And you know, whenever I used to say similar things, I'm like, you know, we probably shouldn't be doing this, because when you think about spaces like concentration camps, we would never have someone pretend to be like, unless they had a monologue, if this was a play, you know, like you're not doing that, just like letting people make up things on the fly. So we should have the same respect for the stories for enslaved people. So,
but it's good to have someone there is talking about
answer
100%. Questions and make it come alive for the young people. You know, like
definitely. Once we were able to make those monologues and things and like have like proper theater performances for these pieces, dude, great time.
Okay, you're amazing. I have goosebumps all over my body. How cool you are. Have you like thought about taking what you've learned from that, like, and taking it to other cities that need education in this department?
Oh yeah, 100%. One of my
every city in the United States.
One of my old colleagues and mentors in a lot of ways. She started her own consulting company where she does education around Black history, and she also does workshops around dialogic interpretation and how we talk to each other, and how to like communicate and break things down, also cultural competencies. So her and I have been in touch, and I'm hoping to get some things, you know, do some traveling, do some workshops with kiddos, because there's a lot of workshops that I've created over the years that I'm like, oh yeah, even though I'm not in that field anymore, I would still love to teach it and double down, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm
really cool.
definitely into it.
I didn't even know this about.
My
I just saw
husband
you on
consistently
television.
wants me to open my own museums. He's like,
really?
He's like, oh, you should open a museum in Selma,
there's a
Alabama.
lot of money in museums.
More so because he knows that I will try to interpret things correctly.
Yes, so you could get the word out.
Like we went to Galveston, Texas a couple years ago, because my brother was living in Houston at the time, and Galveston is only like a 2-hour drive away. And so we were visiting my brother, and we drove down to Galveston for a couple of days, and that's where the origination of Juneteenth, that's where the last enslaved people were told that they were freed, yada yada. That's where we also get the Juneteenth Jubilee. That's where that first happens. And so they do a Jubilee every year to celebrate Juneteenth. They were doing this before the federal holiday. And yet, if you go down to Galveston, Texas, which shouldn't have surprised me because Texas, there's like 2 memorials to Juneteenth or to enslaved people, and they are small. And their biggest museum on that island is the World War II Museum.
Wow.
Because we like to pretend like things don't exist. So I was like, man, I really want to open a museum here now and talk about Juneteenth.
There's that one about lynching that opened up.
Yes, the Legacy.
Here's amazing.
Yeah, the Legacy Museum is beautiful. I had a really tough time in there. So when I went, it was when I was a director at the Atlanta History Center, and I took my team there. So I was a leader, so I had to kind of
Yeah, you
I
had
couldn't
to be
really
the
focus.
room mom.
Yeah.
You had to not feel everything.
So, but it's so good. So the Legacy Museum takes us from like enslavement through like the prison pipeline and like incarceration and like unfairness in that. And then you have the Memorial for Peace and Justice, which is the lynching section. And that memorial, you go through it and they have these different monuments to people who were killed either in lynchings or in like massacres. So like the 1906 race massacre that happened here in Atlanta, you have like those people represented. And if we don't know their names, we, put unknown and then the date to kind of give a memorial to those people. So very beautiful if you're ever in Alabama.
Yeah, I hear it's amazing. Okay.
But you need like 2 days to recover. So know that.
You gotta go lay down afterwards. Okay. We actually are. I gotta start finding out what kind of a nerd you are.
Let's do it.
This is a very. You've taught me a lot, and it's just interesting to hear all of it through your experience. And I'm so glad that you shared all that. But now we're gonna be silly.
Let's be silly, because that's why I was like YA rom-coms, enslavement. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna talk about with Amy.
I know, but that was such a. You have such a specific experience.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to hear it through your life experiences. All right. But now we're going to see if you are a big dork.
Probably not as much as you want. Yeah, let's do it.
You have a theater thing going.
I do.
So you could be a magnificent nerd. I'm excited. All right. Star Wars or Star Trek?
I have to pick one. Okay, cool.
Oh, okay. See, all right. You can say both.
No, I didn't want to say both. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to say Star Wars because it's the one I've seen the most of.
Okay.
But otherwise, it would be neither.
Are you watching like all of the spin-offs now on Disney Plus?
Nope.
Okay.
I've only seen like 2 Star Wars movies.
Okay, you're not a real nerd for that. Okay.
Nope.
Have you ever LARPed or cosplayed? Not at work, I guess.
Cosplay in some ways, but not in a Dragon Con. Not on a Dragon Con.
Tell
level.
us your cosplay story.
It's mostly like Halloween. I know it's not really honestly, but like I go up for Halloween and I go up for like dressing and costumes. So anything that somebody gives me a theme, I'm down for it.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out
and done a great job.
Look,
yeah.
I love getting dressed. I'm trying to figure out what we're going to be this Halloween, and I kind of want to be Corbin Dallas and my husband's white. I want to be Corbin Dallas and
Talking about Lilu?
no, I want to be Ruby Rod. So I want to be.
Oh my God, yes, Ruby Rod's my favorite from Fifth Element. That is, yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't know what you guys are talking
It's
about.
Fifth Element. It's great.
Fifth Element's a really good sci-fi movie, and Ruby Rod. I should have known that I was bisexual, and I was like, that.
Yeah.
What about we were just
Same.
that?
Is this our bisexual origin story?
Yeah,
Because same.
yeah. It was Fifth Element, and then The Mummy. Where it was like, Mom.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
A lot of good things happening here. I like this aesthetic.
It's all interesting.
Oh my God, I love it. This is great. So do I need to watch this to find out if I'm bisexual? I went to a women's college.
Yeah, why not?
Fifth Element's that's a fun ass time. The director, I don't really think ever got anywhere near close to that. It's such a weird tone.
Yeah, and the amount of people that don't really know about the movie, it's really strange.
Is
It's
that the one where
very
the
good.
alien comes and she like watches all of the history of the world in 5 seconds and
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
crying?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
She's
like all in bandage
She's like
outfit.
Yeah.
She's the
She's a
fifth elf.
supreme being.
Also, you should totally do that because I just want to see that costume because it's so
Done
good.
and done. I think I'm going to do him in the tight leopard print. Just in case you're wondering.
That's the best. The rose one's great too, but the type leopard print that's
Everything.
I did see 2 leopard print Ruby Rods at Dragon Con this year, and I was just like, yes,
absolutely.
super
Yeah,
green.
Thank you so much. It's super green.
Have you been to Dragon Con?
I haven't, but I do like. So when I worked at the National Center, I loved going to where the food hallway situation is. What is that? Peachtree. And sitting and watching I love watching people's costumes.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so cool. It's so
Everybody
fun.
always looks so good.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever like played like D&D, Settlers of Catan, Magic the Gathering?
I played Settlers of Catan because my best friend likes to play it, and when I play it, I like to guilt trip people when they take land from me because I tell them they're taking land from the ancestors.
You play that card, yeah. It was like the longest sitting you've done playing a video game or a board game.
Board games, so when it's not fantasy, Monopoly, I could play it for hours.
Okay.
Video games, it was probably when the Shrek video game was out,
I've never heard of it. That's
or
okay.
there was this other game on Sega Dreamcast that I used to play a lot, that I always forget the name of, but I I played that till the
Okay.
end. So
Have you
for
ever-
a few weeks.
Have you ever held a tropical bird?
No.
You ever had a card collection like Pokemon or baseball?
Pokemon.
Pokemon. Okay. Do you have a cape?
I have a Hogwarts robe. Does that count?
Counts. Yes, you do. Do you have a wand?
I do not have a wand because I want to get a proper wand from
Okay,
Universal,
this is
and
my
I can't
girl.
afford it because it's expensive.
It's expensive. Yep. Okay, so you're a Harry Potter
But
fan.
no bullshit wands. I don't believe in
No,
that.
you gotta get a good one. Do you like have a pair of fairy wings?
No,
Okay,
which is a surprise.
that is a surprise. I bet you could get some if you needed them. This is okay. Do you have a perfect attendance award?
Oh God, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Did you get good grades?
When I wanted to.
When you wanted to.
In college, when I was paying for it, I was
Yeah.
Dean's List, and I graduated cum laude and then summa cum laude in my master's program.
Oh,
But
congratulations.
in high school, no, I didn't like doing homework. And so
well,
that
you
took
were
off a lot of
passionate
points.
about it.
Right.
And so your degrees in education and theater, or
Yeah,
theater
so-
education, like what?
So undergrad, it's a double major in theater and education.
Okay.
And then my master's is in creative and innovative education.
Well, that's what you're doing. You're the
Yeah.
only person I know who majored in something that's that like esoteric and actually gets to use it.
Well, I was. Now I work for a production company. So
All right,
You leave these
I'll
things
allow
behind.
I got excited that someone majored in theater and education, and got to use theater to educate.
yeah, it was a good time.
Dude,
10 out of 10.
and you got a paycheck. It wasn't just like a volunteer thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, good for you. All right, do you have a pilot's license? That's a weird
Nope.
question.
Hate heights.
Me too. Scuba diving, ever done that?
Nope. Don't believe in the ocean.
It's not real. It's a big ocean trying
That's
to
where
teach.
people go to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Scuba diving? No.
Did you ever go to camp in the summer, like band camp, Bible camp,
I went to yearbook camp.
yearbook camp?
throughout my high-
I have never heard of
throughout
this.
high school.
What is
What is
yearbook
yearbook
camp?
camp?
So when you're on the yearbook, every summer, a certain group of people, usually the leadership of the yearbook, get to go to camp where you start preparing what the yearbook's going to look like for the year. So you talk about your theme. You talk about whether it's going to be in color or black and white. You talk about page layouts. You go to little workshops. It's very nerdy.
Listen, that's
Actually,
one
now
of-
that I say it out loud,
That's
it's
one of the nerdiest
nerdiest
camps
things.
I've ever heard of.
I had a great time.
Oh my gosh.
My freshman year, I got to go because our yearbook advisor loved me, and me and him are actually still really cool. We're like very good
Do you
friends.
guys send each other pictures of awesome yearbooks? And
I do have a yearbook collection at home now.
is it Pinterest or actual yearbooks?
It's so my yearbook collection is actual physical yearbooks
I-
throughout the years from the high school that I went to.
But are they your years or like other people's years?
Some of them are not my years.
This is new. This is new. This is a new kink I had not learned about before.
Siblings did go to that high school.
Yeah.
Well, two of my siblings went to that high school as well. So the years that I have, there are people I can look at in them.
Yeah.
So it's not so creepy.
yeah.
It's not like from 1954.
No.
You're just going back to your high school every year. You're like, oh, go ahead and take one. They're like, we're going to cut you
Yeah, they're
off.
like, you can have no more.
Yeah, 62, that was a great vintage for yearbooks. like smelling
my
the
high
mold.
school wasn't made until the 90s, so it's fine.
It's fine. I do have strong feelings about layouts.
I do. My senior year yearbook, because I was the managing editor in chief. God, it keeps getting worse every time I open my mouth about yearbooks. I was the managing editor in chief my senior year, and we were very serious about wanting an all color yearbook. It was the first year that we were going to have a yearbook that was all in color. So we did that. And it was called the Gold Standard, and our colors were blue, silver, white, and gold. So we did a lot of gold. We had these the motif of these lines running through this kind of track work. It was very beautiful. I think my yearbook is the best yearbook that was created.
Well, if you're going to camp about it every summer, I'm going to guess that it is, because I don't think anyone else is putting that much time and commitment to it.
Probably not, but we did fun things like lyric karaoke games where you had to guess the lyric. And
So you said you weren't that nerdy? And then all of these things are coming out of your mouth.
I also was a competition cheerleader, so balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I feel like you do have a cool girl energy about you. Like you have a very sexy voice. You know what
thank
to
you.
say. Like when you're talking.
You
to
could just sit
people.
at every table at lunch.
You're
I did a lot of
bisexual.
that.
You can't get any hotter than that, dude.
Everything's bisexual about me. Right down to my yearbook versus cheerleader.
Yeah, the tension. Do you have a tattoo? A yearbook tattoo?
Oh, no, I don't have a yearbook tattoo, but I have like
Several.
15,
I can see one right now.
Maybe.
You have 15 tattoos?
Maybe more now. I don't know. I stopped counting because it got crazy. But yeah, I have a lot of tattoos.
Are any of them nerdy? Or all of them nerdy?
My nerdiest tattoos might be the ones that are showing currently, which are my Latin phrases. Because
you have Latin tattooed on your body. You and my husband.
It's probably the nerdiest that I have.
Did you take Latin?
I did not, but I liked a lot of the phrases because there's as I dream, I write, and as I teach, I learn. Gotta put that on my body. Memento mori, because we have to remember we all die. Probably the only other nerdy tattoo I have on my body is my Doodle Bob tattoo. So if anybody ever watched SpongeBob, there's an episode where he makes a doodle and the doodle comes to life and he's a menace and he's very dangerous. And me and my best friend got matching tattoos of Doodle Bob, and the entire time we were getting tattooed, we made the ahoy oi 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 noises.
Yes, SpongeBob is so good.
Doodle Bob,
that's such good comedy.
You just told me you got a tattoo because of an esoteric character on an animated TV show. And you were making the sound of the character the whole time you were having the tattoos.
At
but
like
how
9
old
at night.
Were you 7 years old?
No, this happened when I was in my late 20s.
And that's when your front lobe is supposed to be all developed.
You know Mandel, right? I work with him a lot, but he's talked to me before. He was just like, there's never going to be anything funnier than SpongeBob to me. He was like, I'll be sitting there and I'll just start thinking of episodes and I'll be dying. And
especially the early episodes, they were so good.
And he's like, and then I got to explain to someone, I'm 30 and I'm
grown.
I'm just thinking about SpongeBob. No big deal.
And when people look at my tattoo and say, oh, you have a SpongeBob tattoo, I'm like, it's Doodle Bob.
Get it right.
So, yeah.
Are you excited about the musical that's coming out? Or
didn't know that was happening.
Oh, yeah, there's a SpongeBob musical.
It depends. If it's giving early SpongeBob energy, then yes. If it's giving like the new SpongeBob energy, then no. I'm too old for the new stuff.
You like the OG SpongeBob.
Yes.
Clearly, I have not really watched a lot of episodes, so I won't even know the difference. But that makes you very nerdy. I know that. Do you like Jeopardy?
Not as much as I could, but I do like trivia.
Do you like trivia? Okay. Have you ever said huzzah?
Yes.
You've been in the Run Fair?
All the time.
All the time.
Oh, no, not the Run Fair all the time. Huzzah all the time. Run Fair once. I hated it because it's hot.
Fair enough. Did you ever dress in a costume like to go to school like more than one day in a row?
No.
Okay, I did. But have you ever been shoved in a locker?
No.
Okay. Have you ever written fan fiction?
Yes.
Ooh, what did you write fan fiction about?
I wrote a fanfic about Taylor Lautner. I had this dream once after I watched the first Twilight movie where Taylor Lautner as an actor was on this show about being on a reservation, and there was this other girl who was a Black woman who was part of an indigenous tribe that was more, melanated. And so she was also cast on the show, but she was was her first acting gig. And her and Taylor Lautner had a hot night where she accidentally gets pregnant, which is ironic because her character on the show is like pregnant by his character. And then they're having to work through all of this, and it's a lot.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, Stephanie Meyer's not the only one who can have a dream and then write it down.
Yeah. Okay. I think I know what I need to know from my questions. I just want to see if they're okay. Legos, Death Star Lego. No. Do you play an instrument?
No.
Coin collection?
No.
Aquarium?
No.
Ham radio?
No.
God, that camp one still has got me swirling. This is you have some of the weirdest nerdy things to come across my desk, and I don't know what episode we're on, but I've interviewed a lot of people.
Thank you.
I feel like
this is hot bisexual nerd energy.
This is
I've had many friends like this. From just like yeah. Once again, you sat at every table, you're just going around, and you're
friends with everybody. I'm friends with the skaters. Yeah. I'm friends with the people who are deemed nerdy. I'm friends with the football players and the basketball players.
Very chameleon energy. Where it's like I'll go to whatever party. I'll find someone there.
Yeah.
That'd be fine. And you'll get a tattoo about it, and then go to camp about the It's Yearbook.
I also have an Encanto tattoo on my thigh, which is a Disney movie.
You have a Disney tattoo?
Yeah, I have a Disney tattoo on my thigh.
Get out of my house.
And I got that one like 2 years ago. Maybe a year ago. So
You remember Jose, my
Yes.
bestie? He's got the Magic Kingdom on his calf.
gotta do it. You gotta.
These
Sometimes you gotta
Disney
commit.
people with their Disney tattoos. I've got bits about it. I won't do them. Oh, my love. All right. I didn't know because usually I knew you were. You know all the words to a musical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's one of the
To
questions.
multiple musicals.
Usually, cool energy people aren't nerds, but my friend. Yeah, you're a grade A, sexy, bisexual, romance novel nerd lady. And I'm so lucky to have you in my life, bringing sparkle. You're like a
Yeah.
unicorn nerd.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I mean, I feel like you should have known I was a nerd when I came over to go into your pool and you showed me your costume closet. And then I was like, I need to wear this headdress for the rest of the day. Normal people don't do that. I don't think.
It's great. Yeah. Well, everyone needs a little sparkle.
Yeah, you got to do it.
A little sparkle.
Love
a
a
crown,
fascinator.
A little fascinator. Yeah. A boa, feather boa. Let's go. All right, sweetheart. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Yes. Hi, I'm Jasmine Waters. You can find me on Instagram at Real Life by Jasmine. That's usually where I post if I'm going to have a show or anything important coming up. You can also find me on our podcast. So Down and Nappy, we are a rewatch Downton Abbey podcast. A lot of fun from the perspective of 3 Black women.
It's wonderful.
It's insane and we love it. You can find us on Instagram at down.n.nappy. And While We Were Drinking, you can find us also on Instagram at While We Were Drinking.
Wonderful. That sounds like fun. All right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.